You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Southeast Group.
Hey, this is Renaud here from Southeast, and today is April 5th, and that means it's been 3 days, well, I'm in China, so more like two and a half days after Trump's announcement on what they call Liberation Day in the US, April the 2nd, and everybody is sort of like, what happened, right? So here's what I kind of understood, and here's what I'm thinking about it. So I did a little podcast episode or bonus episode when the first 10% extra tariff came on China, and then there was another 10% after that. Okay, so total 20%. And Trump said, oh, this is just because China is not really playing the game, not really restraining the all the production of fentanyl that gets sold on the streets in the USA. Okay, and as I said at the time, well, yeah, this 20%, they kind of feel like a placeholder, something to put out there, and it's just the start, and more is going to come later, or is going to change into something new. Well, that was correct. So April the 2nd, the White House came out with something for, like, I don't know, their top 60 or so biggest trading partners, except for Canada and Mexico, which are in a special situation. Obviously, Trump wants to renegotiate the USMCA free trade agreement. I mean, not exactly free trade, but anyway, trade agreement that actually he renegotiated in his first term. Now he's still not happy about it. He thinks he can bully them into getting something even more positive for the USA. So Canada and Mexico are in a special place. They're not mentioned here. They already have 25% on everything for the time being. He also excluded Russia. Not sure why. There's still a few $1 billion of trade between the two countries. He put more tariffs on some very close allies like Israel, Japan, Korea, and lower tariffs on places like Iran. Okay, and again, no tariffs on Russia. So it's very much just about trade, and trade of goods, not trade of services. They did not look at the trade of services, which all comes together in the balance of payments. And actually, there's more profit made when services are traded. You know, when the US is selling a lot more services to the European Union and buying fewer goods, it's probably much more profitable. But anyway, so what is the overall logic here? Let's say the simplistic logic, from what I understand, and I'm not really sure, but it feels like he wants to slow the other countries' access to the US market. He wants to slow it down. He wants to get them to pay, but of course with tariffs, it's not really the other countries that pay, is the importer, right? So in most cases, the importer is an American business. Okay, so, but maybe he feels that they're kind of traders and not really helping the country. Okay, anyway, he doesn't care about them, it's pretty clear. So he wants to slow down the access of other countries on the US market, and he wants to rebalance the balance of the trade of goods and merchandises. And hopefully, from what he says, he wants not just to rebalance, but he wants the American manufacturers to start to make a lot more products and export them and drive the economic growth of the USA that way. Okay, that's sort of what he's saying. And to justify that, to back it up, they came up with some really weird math that don't make any sense and are pretty childish. But they came up with it, and all of his administration, the people in charge of that, of trade and so on, kind of kept a straight face. So that this is probably the most worrisome, but I'll get back to that. So some really weird and childish pseudo math, and they came up with, this is how much tariff or equivalent to tariff they charge on goods made in USA sold in their countries. So, we're going to actually be nice. We're going to divide it by 2 or so, and we're going to put reciprocal tariffs, right? He wants to reciprocate. If they charge that much, then we're going to charge that much, more or less, and discount it a little bit and whatever. Okay, so typical bully kind of negotiation approach. I come out with a big stick and I give you a rough time, and then I'm going to extract some concessions from you. It's kind of mafioso kind of approach, maybe. Well, you're going to pay us for this or else, right? Okay, but we know Trump. We know his background. Everybody in New York City knows that we should never do business with this guy. We should never lend money to this guy, because that's sort of his approach to business. And now he's bringing that onto the whole world. But hey, what can we do? He's been elected. He's in charge in the White House, and that's it. We have to deal with it, right? So back to what it means. Well, what it means first is what it means for China, right? So it seems like on most product categories after April 9th, so we're talking 4 days from now, right? Pretty short. It announces all of this, and it's coming up just the following week. There's going to be tariffs on products made in China and shipped to the USA or imported into the USA in the amount of somewhere between 54% and 79%, and in some cases 83% or more. And of course, if there were special high tariffs, then in some cases it's more than 100%, like batteries for electric vehicles and things like that. All right. Now, it's not really clear. Not everybody is positive, is like very confident that that's the situation. We're not 100% sure. Okay. Should we add the 20% extra tariffs that came for, let's say, a punishment for not stopping fentanyl manufacturing or fentanyl active ingredients manufacturing and all of that, plus the 301 tariffs that were already in place, plus the 34% reciprocal tariffs that were announced on April 2nd. We're not 100% sure. This is Trump, right? So everything is a bit fuzzy, a bit funny, and we're still waiting for very clear guidance on that, and we'll see what the U.S. Customs and Border Protection really says and does. Now, it's not just tariffs on finished products. Again, just like the fentanyl 20% tariffs. No, this is also applied on components, modules, sub-assemblies, and so on. So Trump says, we're going to make this country great again, and we're going to kick off manufacturing and so on and so forth. Now, I work primarily in the electronics industry, and you're not going to find, at least for consumer electronics, relatively price-sensitive products that need to be made in the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands or more. You're not going to find the whole supply chain in the USA. And you're probably going to have to keep buying a lot of things from China. So if you want to do final assembly in the US, but you have to pay very high tariffs on what you import, well, it doesn't make it very interesting actually to assemble in the US. Okay, so that's a bit kind of confusing, right? If I go back to why China became such a powerhouse, well, that's because a lot of manufacturing migrated from places like Taiwan and Malaysia and others into mainland China. Well, first it was final assembly that migrated there because, we could get all these components there from, again, Taiwan, Malaysia, etc., and do the final assembly, testing, packaging, etc., for cheap, and then export it. All right. And then over time, that led to the migration of all the component manufacturing and surface treatment and so on and so forth to China, because once you have final assembly in one place, you really want to have more and more of the supply chain in that same place. It seems like the White House is not trying to emulate that, not trying to learn from how things actually work. Okay, so that was just my my little comment on this. It's just very confusing. It's not just China that's getting hit hard. Places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos are getting hit very hard with tariffs of 40 to 50%, because yes, these countries have been benefiting from the China Plus One strategy, and they've been doing a lot of final assembly of products that were then exported to the USA. And their commercial surplus with the USA is very high. And again, the White House right now is not focused on, containing China, whatever, buying less from China, decoupling from China, and favoring sort of alternatives so that they don't totally rely on China. No, they don't care about that. Here, again, it's about trying to put a fence around the US market, make it harder for people to access it, rebalance the trade of goods and things like that. Okay, it's simple, a bit simplistic, let's say. And again, it's within the context of a strategy of a typical bully or a mafia organization, as I said earlier. And on our side, as I mentioned, we are quite involved in the electronic industry. We have our manufacturing facility in mainland China, so of course, all our customers are getting pretty worried about that. All the customers that export significant amounts of products to the USA are getting very worried about that. So we've been quite active over the past few years, but especially over the past 6 months, building some alternatives in countries like India and Malaysia. And I'm looking at the list, and they're, let's say, compared with Vietnam, they are not hit too bad. Okay. India, 26%, Malaysia, 24%. And when you look at the capabilities of these countries, the depth of expertise in electronics, especially in Malaysia, well, these countries are starting to look much better. Okay. Much, much better. And also these two countries are not taking the stance of, hey, we're going to fight against the USA, right? Some countries or areas are going to fight. Like China already announced, oh, okay, you put 34%, I put 34%. You want reciprocal? I'm going to be reciprocal, right? You're not going to bully me like that. I'm also a heavyweight, and you're not going to throw me around. Okay. Well, that's going to be an interesting negotiation, or they're not really negotiating now. They're just showing each other their muscles or their teeth. I'm not really sure. Now, other places are being much more friendly. Israel, Vietnam just say, okay, no problem. You want 0% tariff from us? We give you 0% tariff. We're going to work on that, or we do it already. Okay. Japan, not really sure what to do. European Union, yeah, they say they're going to fight back. They're going to put probably some tariffs. They're also going to try to be amenable and say, okay, let's, turn the page quick. What do you want? You want us to buy more liquid gas? You want us to buy more agricultural product? What do you want, right? I think that's the way it's gonna happen, but they're going to try to maybe hit the GAFA. Oh, you hit us on goods trade. Okay, we hit you on service trade because you have a surplus, and it's actually much more profitable than the goods trade, right? So let's see what they're going to say. So some countries are trying to be more friendly than others. Both Malaysia and India are trying to be a bit more friendly. They really, really want access to the US market. And they are not trying to be confrontational. So that also means, okay, right now it's 26%, 24%. It might go down to 20, 15, maybe 10%. Now, is it going to go below 10%? I'm not so sure. Thing is, Trump likes the idea of having a 10% tariff as a basis on everything. Again, except for Russia and a few others. I'm not really sure why. He even put 10% on some small uninhabited islands off of Antarctica. Who knows why? Don't ask me why. Everybody was laughing about that. And as far as electronic manufacturing is going, what's going to happen is that a lot of the R&D and NPI, new product introduction work, is going still to take place in China, just because that's where the supply chain is. That's where a lot of the talent are. That's where things move really fast. And again, especially in consumer electronics, you really want to move fast. Okay, that's where the tooling is much cheaper, and so on and so forth. And then once the production is relatively mature, after maybe 2 or 3 mass productions, start to relocate production, relocate assembly, including PCB assembly and final product assembly, testing, packaging in another country under quality control, right? So incoming QC is still done in China, and the parts, the components are going to be kitted. A little bit of maybe sub-assemblies still done in China, okay, but keep enough transformation in the other country. That's going to be the country of origin in the eyes of the USA's customs officers, right? Keep enough work in that country so that it actually gets labeled as substantial transformation. And in electronics, substantial transformation, from what I read in different places and what I heard, is the place where the product really acquires its final characteristics. Okay, so for an electronic product, you have, let's say, the main PCBA, the main board that controls the product. Is kind of the brain of the product. If you get the bare board maybe from China, but you populate it in that other country and you flash the firmware in that other country, well, all of this really means, okay, the product is really becoming the product in that other country, right? Whereas if you ship everything, all the parts, and you just get a screwdriver and you assemble things together and pack it, no. If all of the parts came from, for example, from China, yeah, it's still going to be a made in China product in their eyes, right? So that's really something to keep in mind, and it's not that difficult to do with proper organization, of course. There's some other countries. There's a lot of very special cases, and I was thinking of a few friends or friendly competitors and customers in the industry who relocated production to various places. So, for example, a French company I know, good people, they've set up their own manufacturing facility in Tunisia, and they make a lot of IoT products that are sold to the USA, not just in USA, but some big customers of theirs are in the USA. And now Tunisia is hit pretty hard with a relatively high tariff, so that's a bummer. Another friendly competitor set up in Colombia, and Colombia just has a 10% tariff. So that's actually pretty good for them. Some others are in Portugal, so it's like 20% tariff, not so good, right? So everybody who kind of went here and there, and a lot of them went to Vietnam, and now they're pretty disappointed, right? So, and a lot of them went to Mexico, and there's a very high uncertainty with Mexico. As I mentioned, the USMCA trade agreement is very probably going to be renegotiated. Is the White House going to require that Mexico puts tariffs on components and products coming from China, so that this sort of backdoor that allowed a lot of Chinese companies to set up manufacturing in Mexico and sell a lot to the USA directly this way, this backdoor is going to be closed. A lot of people are suspecting that is going to happen. Let's see, but it's a relatively high probability. And then that makes it much less attractive for companies to do final assembly, testing, and packaging of products with components all coming from China, right? So let's see. Now, all of this is subject to change. It might change in the next few hours. It might change next week. Every country is calling the White House from what they say. And better wait and see what actually happens. Let's see what deals are negotiated, because again, this is all big negotiation. This is the opening of a negotiation, right? Just like the mafia movies. I burn your car. Oh, you should pay us for protection. You don't pay us for protection, I burn your restaurant. Oh, you don't pay us for protection. Well, what's going to happen next, right? Now, what are the consequences that we can foresee, right? So after Liberation Day is Retaliation Day, of course. Trade war is deepening between China and the USA. Now it's pretty clear. You put 34%, I put 34% on your products, and let's see who blinks first. So let's see what happens. China also announced some various other things, export controls on certain minerals and a host of other things, preventing some US companies from buying anything from China and so on and so forth. I would also expect some other squeezes, let's say, on companies like maybe Apple, Starbucks and others are going to be squeezed out of the market. I can see a lot of pain for some US companies that sell a lot in China. Well, Yum brands, KFC, Pizza Hut and others, McDonald's, and on and on and on. Okay, so trade war is one thing, not just China, but let's see what the EU does. Let's see what Korea, Japan, and others do. Another one that's pretty obvious is inflation. If this keeps going, if these deals don't get made pretty fast, it's pretty obvious that the prices of a lot of products are going to go up in the US. Now, I was pretty surprised. I saw, again, a survey recently that over 40% of Americans think that prices will remain unaffected. Well, let's see. Obviously, the stock market already is anticipating a lot of difficulties going down. If the dollar goes down, obviously everything they import is going to be more expensive just that way, right? And then if there's a lot of tariffs on everything imported, prices are not going magically to stay the same. So it's going to be a bit of a price shock. Now, what else? There's going to be a hit on global economic growth. Okay. Let's see. Again, it depends on how long the situation lasts. I think that the World Trade Organization and multilateral trade agreements in general are kind of dead. As long as Trump is here, this is going to be basically, it is not going to drive anything. It's just going to be dead. However, regional agreements, especially outside of not involving the USA, are going to get a boost. The EU is talking about a deal with the Mercosur again, so with Latin American countries, and there's some others, right? India, Japan, and Australia, and so on and so forth. Okay. A big question is this going to drive tariffs up across the board, sort of like in the 1930s, with obvious implications on economic growth? Or are the other countries going to find ways to keep trading freely or relatively freely, or maybe more freely than now, again with regional agreements, and keep the USA aside, like, hey, this is the bad boy, wants to play rough. Let's leave them aside for now. Let's wait until there is political alternative, but we can really count on them in the long term anyway. Let's see. Big question marks, right? Another big question mark is, what about all these made in China products that are currently that have been sold in the USA in large numbers, where are they going to go? Like the EU is really getting scared now, but also Brazil and a lot of other countries. Okay, what's going to happen, right? And a lot of countries have started to put some barriers on some of these made in China products. Okay, it's a long list, but I mean, electric vehicles is the obvious one. The USA already has very high tariffs from the Biden era. The EU has been putting extra duties. Even Russia, that has been importing a lot of made in China vehicles, has put some kind of extra fee for recycling or who knows what, just to slow it down, right? It's basically is kind of tariff, just disguised, right? So let's see. And the last big question is there an end game in Trump's mind? Or is he just trying to push all other countries to give him a better deal? Does he even know where he's going, right? There's no industrial policy here. He keeps saying, oh, it's going to make us rich and so on and so forth. Just the tariffs are going to be enough. But with no industrial policy, and while still taxing components the same as finished goods, I don't see a movement to boost manufacturing output, manufacturing activity in the USA, right? I think he only hired yes men in his administration, and that's actually what scares me the most. They all kept a straight face when he pulled out his weird numbers and made his childish arguments. So there's no safeguards, right? All these people were hired on the condition that they support the trade policy. It's not like in the first term of Trump, where the various high-level people in his administration actually blocked extra tariffs. Now he has full control over that. And again, there's no safeguards, right? So that's pretty scary. He likes the idea of emulating what President McKinley did in the 19th century. That guy really pushed high for tariffs and so on. And then over time, as he learned, he advocated more for a reciprocal approach. So that's what Trump is kind of trying to emulate. Trump seems to have a strong desire to, sort of a nostalgia to get back to the late 19th century. He wants to drill oil. He likes the idea maybe of having some robber barons, right? Just like Rockefeller and Standard Oil and Carnegie and the others. Maybe that's Musk and Bezos and the others. I have no idea. Okay, it's kind of funny. So the final tip is focus on your operations. Don't make a rash decision, because everything might move in another direction very soon. Okay, but obviously you need to work on alternatives, and let's say maybe plan B, plan C. Okay, that's what we are working on, certainly. And as I wrote on December the 2nd, what are the approaches, right? You can work on reclassifying your products. Well, that's less interesting. That was a powerful strategy with the 301 tariffs, and it can still save you maybe up to, 25% maybe. So that's still something you might want to look at. Relocate production. Now, that's really something that looks pretty obvious with such high differences in tariffs from one country to the other, right? Reshore. I'm not really sure about that, as long as tariffs also apply on components. And rethink your operations, rethink how manufacturing is done, rethink the design of your products, right? Maybe some value engineering, value analysis might allow you to save a lot of money while still keeping your customers happy, just with slightly different products. Okay, so I'll leave you with these thoughts. I hope that this helped you maybe clarify your thoughts also. And, well, all of this is not fun, but again, everything might change maybe within a few days, right? So let's keep watching the news, but don't overreact. All of this might dissipate like a screen of smoke, right? Let's see where it goes. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sophie's Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.